Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, but we're going to head up towards Stockholm once again, and we're revisiting a brewery who have really impressed me in previous reviews, so I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. So for this review then, we are going to go to the Fjäderholm Islands, which are a little bit out to the east of the main city of Stockholm, of course, and we're having a taste of another beer from Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri. This one is the Big Mama. It comes in at 12% ABV, an Imperial Stout aged in American bourbon barrels, and they've added cocoa nibs, vanilla and hazelnuts to it. So yeah, this one I think will be a little bit of a beast. The other beers that I've reviewed from this brewery before, I've had two IPAs, the Dubbel Larsen and the Yarrow IPA more recently. The Dubbel Larsen was the first ever beer that I reviewed from these guys, and I've also reviewed the Mr. Cocoa and also the Heavy Fuel, which was the barley wine. The Mr. Cocoa was another Imperial Stout actually. I've been impressed with all of them, so I'm really curious to see how this one turns out as well. I can't remember whether this one was released either in December of 2019 or whether it was January 2020, but it was released through one of the local and småsekt assortments in Systembolaget. I had two orders. My order from December was merged with the one from January, so I'm not sure exactly what order this one was in. But like I say, this is a brewery that I've been impressed with before. This beer strikes me as being a little bit more of a beast than the other ones were, so hopefully it kind of lives up to that, and hopefully it's as good as the other ones that I've had from these guys before as well. So looking forward to it, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. Definitely excited to return to these guys after a good few months now. So yeah, let's see how we get on. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri then, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, on to my brewery notes. So Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you before, is based on the small set of islands of the same name out to the east of central Stockholm. I would say that it's in Stockholm Bay, but you know, that eastern coast of Stockholm, if you like, there's so many little islands and things out there that, you know, you can't really say that it's in the Stockholm Bay. It's pretty much right in the middle of two kind of waterways coming together, if you like. But this company was founded back in 2013 by Pelle Ågren and Andreas Willman, both of whom used to work for McNaira, who were the first Swedish whisky distillery. But they'd often talked about brewing beer together, and then they began to homebrew and just took it from there. Eventually they managed to sort out their premises in late 2013, and they were ready to open up by April of 2014, and they're now joined at the brewery by Tobias Forsberg. But they have their own restaurant as well, but in bar, and this stops operations over the winter months and runs from spring to autumn, but the brewery itself is run as a year-round business, and you can order their beers all across Sweden these days. The brewery itself is located right next to the water, and apparently most of the customer base in the bar and restaurant are actually tourists, and hopefully I can get out there at some point. When I've been in Stockholm, it has been more, I think it's been in April that I've been there, and I've also been there in summer but for work, so I wasn't able to get out there. But I really hope that I can go out and visit their restaurant at some point. That would be very cool. It's one of these kind of typical sort of Swedish red wooden type buildings, actually, the Scandinavian maritime houses, if you like. It looks very nice. But the brewery apparently has its own boat, but this doesn't solve all the issues that they encounter with logistics and transport and things. In 2018 apparently they produced around 70,000 litres of beer per year. One third of this was apparently sold on the island, 1/3 of it goes into the city of Stockholm, and the remaining 1/3 goes to Systembolaget to be distributed across the country. But they've got a good number of beers there. I'm sure when I checked Untappd it was about 50 different types of beers that they've produced so far, and you know, they've got releases that they do every year. The Mr. Cocoa and the Big Fuel, the Heavy Fuel, sorry. Those are released every Christmas, and they've got various different IPAs and things like that that are released every so often throughout the year. There's also a barrel-aged version of Mr. Cocoa, and from what I've seen, those are the beers that are released you know, every year. I'm not, as I say, I'm not sure if this one was released in December or whether it was released in January actually, but there was Mr. Cocoa and Heavy Fuel this year as well. So yeah, if you want to try some of the beers from these guys, Christmas time is a very good time to do it. But you know, keep an eye out for their IPAs as well. The IPAs that I tried from these guys, the Dubbel Larsen and the Yarrow IPA, they were very much like some of the ones you'll get from Malmö Brewing Company in here in Skåne in the south of Sweden, who in my opinion are one of the best breweries in the country. It's just a shame they don't bottle and can and things like that. But yeah, a brewery that you definitely want to check out, and hopefully, as I say, I can go up there and film a little out and about video for you at some point soon as well. I'd love to film a few more out and about videos here in Sweden. I don't think I've filmed any yet, but that is something that definitely needs to be fixed. But a very good brewery in my opinion, and hopefully there's more new beers to review from them at some point soon. But that's all you really need to know about Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website. It's very nicely done. I think it's very recently been updated, to be honest, but you can check that out. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out all the different beers that they've produced on Rate Beer and Untappd as well. I've noticed they've got a core range now of 5 different beers. There's a Vienna lager in there, which I would be very keen to try. I'll need to look that one up. But they're always releasing new things through the local and småsigt assortment in Systembolaget as well. So keep an eye out for their beers at the start of every month. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is an Imperial Stout, aged in American bourbon barrels. They've added cocoa nibs, vanilla and hazelnuts to this one. The artwork on this is kind of similar to what you would get from the Heavy Fuel, if I remember correctly, but Heavy Fuel I think is like pink and gold, or is that Mr. Cocoa? I think Heavy Fuel might be black and gold, I'm not quite sure. Mr. Cocoa is definitely pink, but yeah, the artwork on this one is very similar to that. And there you can see the Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri symbol on there, the anchor, to sort of mark the maritime heritage, if you like, of the islands and the brewery. That is also on the bottle cap there as well. They've got some nice barrels on there, or fats as they call them in Swedish, to mark that this one is bourbon barrel aged, and they've got the coordinates of the islands and the brewery up there as well, which I think is pretty cool. It tells you a little bit on the side about this one, but I think that just, you know, it just talks about that this beer, it wasn't brewed in accordance with the German Reinheitsgebot, because they've added other things to it, and they've added cocoa nibs, vanilla, hazelnuts, and then aged it in bourbon barrels. So it just tells you a little bit about that and the different flavours and stuff that you'll get. But that's the whole point of doing the video. We don't want to read too much about that. But this one says it is best before the 17th of October 2172. I do wonder about that. You know, is this just a random number that they've put on this, or is there actually a reason for it being 152 years in advance? I'm not really sure about that, but I mean, an Imperial Stout, it's going to last for a hell of a long time, to be honest with you. But you know, this is one I thought this would be really nice, and I just fancied it, so that's why I'm reviewing it for you now. But of course, you could age this one for a good number of years. But I would, if anyone from the brewery is watching, in the description below, let me know why it's 2172. I would be curious to know that. But this is the first ever batch of this beer. It tells you there, batch number 1. Look at that, 2172, batch 1. Mental. But yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the taste. And I'm really curious to see how this one turns out. Didn't want to open there, but yeah, a little bit of smoke as we open it up, and we'll get it out and into the glass. I'm curious to see as well whether this one leans towards the sweet end of the spectrum, or whether it's going to be a little bit more roasty and toasty, because of course that's one of the things that always happens when it comes to barrel aging and stuff. The mouthfeel always becomes that little bit thinner, and you start to get more kind of infused flavours out of it. So I'm really curious to see exactly what this one has in store. But as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one's poured a lovely dark ebony kind of rosewood colour. This beer is basically black as night. If you shine a bit of light through it, you're going to get some kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, but that's very, very minimal. You can see there was about a quarter to a third finger of a frothy, quite dark tan head on this one. That's fading away to just be a very, very thin foamy layer at the moment. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and there's a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there, but nothing really surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. It looks very, very nice, I have to say. But when you open this beer up, you really get a smell of like dusty chocolate. It really comes across quite like that. It's almost if you smell the inside of like a, like a hot chocolate can. You get the cans of the hot chocolate powder. The smell of this one from opening up the bottle really reminds me of that. But let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on. Oh yeah, I have to say, the aroma of this beer is absolutely beautiful. Straight away you can smell the American bourbon barrels in this. It's got that very smooth kind of oaky quality to it. American bourbon for me always comes across as being a little bit sweeter and more brown sugary than Scotch whisky does. Scotch whisky, it can be a bit smoky, it can be a bit citrusy, it can be a bit, some of them can be a little bit more sweet and brown sugary, to be honest, but to me as a Scot, American bourbon does smell pretty different, and you get that little bit more of a kind of brown sugary, almost like butterscotchy, to be honest. I don't think you get butterscotch, the kind of diacetyl notes normally with Scotch whisky, but I've noticed it's a little bit more prevalent with the American bourbon whiskies. So yeah, you do get a lot of that in there. Love the way the woody notes come out of this is really, really very nice. But you've got that dusty, chocolatey quality that I was talking about in there. The chocolate overall I think comes across as being a little bit more milky, but that might just be because they've got vanilla in this as well. You do get a few elements of the higher cocoa chocolate, the sort of 70–80% type chocolate, but mainly the chocolate for me is quite milky, but I think the vanilla is giving you the impression of that. The vanilla is quite prevalent at the front of the nose, I have to say. So yeah, that dusty chocolate note is absolutely lovely in this one too. I really like how that comes together. It's a beautiful smelling beer. You do get a little bit of a kind of straight up kind of caramelly note out of this one. There is a wee bit of that, but really the brown sugars are more from the barrel aging and things out of this one. There will be a bit of caramel or something added into this because you can pick up those sweeter, more oily caramel notes underneath, but you've also got that wee touch of like biscuit oil, like McVitie's Digestive. There is a wee bit of that in here, I have to say. The nuts, you do get some of the nutty notes out of this at the front of the nose as well. But overall, it's really, to me, the dominant aroma in this is the wood and the sort of bourbon barrel characteristics. The dusty chocolate lingers there. You've got vanilla elements to it as well, but to me it's really the thing that really just sticks there and sticks in the nose is the kind of woody, the oaky smoothness, and the light sort of wafery bourbon barrel brown sugar type flavour, or aromas rather, that come out of this one. It's a really nice smelling beer, this. I don't think I've come across a bourbon barrel beer that smelled quite like this one. But this is cool. To find a beer like this from a little brewery on a wee island in Stockholm Bay, I think that's pretty cool. That tells you all you need to know about the Swedish craft beer scene. There's about 400 breweries in Sweden these days, and going to some of the smaller ones like this, you can really find some cracking beers. Värmdö Brewery are another one from that region that are doing some really interesting things with barrel aging as well. They've got some cracking stuff. The Lusebulla Stout that I reviewed for you a couple of videos back, that beer was insane. And this one really isn't too far away from that. I've been impressed with the IPAs and the more straight up beers that I've had from these guys, if you can say that. But I think this one will be a little bit special even compared to those. On the hoppy side of things then, there is a little bit of earthiness to this one. Tiny little bit of floral quality, but as I say, the hops in this for me are mainly earthy. There's a little bit of grassiness too. I'd be curious to know exactly what hops it is. Would it be like Bramling's Cross or something, or maybe, I don't think it's Northern Brewer. The earthiness is a bit too dark for that. It could be a little bit of American Williamette or Summit or something like that. There's a few hops that are very popular when it comes to big imperial stouts like this. There's something that's telling me The earthiness in this one is a little bit dark and almost English, so I do wonder if there's just a wee bit of Bramling's Cross in this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's Will You Met too, and maybe a bit of Summit or something. Always like playing Guess the Hops with the beers, as I tell you. But on the fruity side of things, you've got a wee bit of a sharper raisiny note to this one, and to me, it really comes across as kind of black curranty and blackberry-ish. The berries in this one are quite juicy. It doesn't have that lighter kind of figgy note to it that you can get out of some of these beers. So raisins, blackberries and black currants for me in the fruity side of things. But overall, it's quite a woody smelling beer. The nuttiness is there, in fairness. The vanilla is there too. But really, it's quite an infused aroma, this one. It's a lot of the kind of bourbon barrel characteristics that are dominating this. So take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of it before you get stuck in, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and just see how we get on. So this one is the Big Mama, a 12% bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout with vanilla, cocoa nibs and what was it again, hazelnuts added to the brew, from Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri on the Fjäderholm Islands, just out to the east of the main city of Stockholm. A brewery that I always enjoy reviewing things from. So let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål. That's really nice. That's a really nice take on a bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout, I have to say. You know, in a few videos that I've done recently, I felt a little bit conflicted about barrel aging, because you know it really does. It takes the mouthfeel down a little bit, in my opinion. But if it's done properly, it can turn out really quite nicely. And you know, I think these guys have done a pretty damn good job of that, to be honest. And you know, when they've worked for Macmyra, you know, these guys have the ideal pedigree for barrel aging, to be honest. You know, it's pretty cool, I have to say. So if anyone's going to get a barrel aged beer right, it's going to be these guys. And like I say, Vermdu from not too far away are also very good in this category as well. But thumbs up to Fjäderholmarnas for this. This is another really solid beer. So yeah, first impression of this one then is that it's a big boozy stout. This is definitely not the most oily and thick of stouts that you're going to come across, but then again, with barrel aging, it's quite difficult to maintain that big syrupy quality. I mean, you get a lot of infused flavours from this. But yeah, middle of your palate then, you can really feel that nice sort of oaky, woody quality just blanketing the middle of your tongue. The further you go into the aftertaste, it becomes a little bit more it smoothens out a little bit, and then you start to get some of the chocolatey and nutty notes and things out of the beer. You can feel the bourbon really infused into the woody aspects of the flavour of this beer as well, but it really is that bourbon barrel oaky flavour that's forming the sort of linchpin of the beer, if you like. Yeah, I really like how that goes together. In the very centre of your palate, you'll get a little bit more of a kind of stronger brown sugary note out of this one. You'll find that this beer in the centre of the palate, it really dries out quite a little bit. Those woody infused bourbon flavours, they really linger into the aftertaste, but you can feel the centre of your palate really drying out with this one. And in the centre of the palate, you get a little bit of that thicker kind of caramelly note. As you move further out from that, you've got the kind of chocolatey notes as well. You can really feel the kind of dryness from the cocoa nibs in there as well. As you move further forward from that, you start to get the vanilla flavours and also the nice kind of hazelnut type flavours out of this one as well. I really like how the flavours in this beer are just mixing in together. It comes across as very infused and a very woody Imperial Stout. I think the vanilla and the nuts actually take a little bit of a back seat in this one compared to the other elements. Even the cocoa nibs, they come out, you know, when the palate dries out, you do get quite a bit of that, but I think the nuts and the vanilla take a bit of a back seat in this. I don't know, maybe this beer would have been better without the barrel aging, but even as a barrel aged beer, it is pretty good, if that makes sense. But a lot of the barrel aging kind of dominates the flavour, I would say. So it would have been cool to try an original Big Mama, if you like, and then a barrel-aged Big Mama. I think that might have been an interesting thing to do with this, but you know, I'm kind of nitpicking here. The main point is that this is a really quite nice beer. The additions to the beer, I think, are a little bit more subtle than you might have thought, to be honest. But as an Imperial Stout in general, it really is very, very nice. I like that. Like I say, the nutty flavours, they come out. If you go to the centre of your palate and move forward, that's when you get the kind of hazelnutty notes. Later on in the flavour, I think the vanilla comes out a little bit more. And as you move out towards the edge of your tongue from the centre of the palate, that's when you get the more dusty, kind of chocolatey, cocoa nib type flavours out of this beer as well. So yeah, it's really nice how that all goes together, I would say. The malt base in this one really is just, it's very, very solid. I mean, obviously this is quite a long boil stout. You look at the colour of it, and the boil of this will be about 3-4 hours, no doubt about that. On the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, there is a little bit of hoppiness there, as you're always going to get from a barrel-aged stout, though there's not overly much in the way of hoppy presence. I mean, the hops will drop for the most part after about 6 months or so. I don't know how long this one's been barrel-aged for, maybe about a year or something like that, but you can feel that the hops in this one don't play such a big role in the flavour. There's a wee bit of that earthiness in the back corners of the palate. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, that spreads forward a little bit. Wee teeny bit of floral quality on the front corners of the palate, but again that's very minimal. Then round the front curve of the palate you can detect the remnants of a little bit of grassiness and things in there as well. But yeah, again, the more and more I drink of this one, the more the sort of dry, dusty chocolate comes out. You can feel it sort of spreading forward on the palate in here, but then behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters are pushing their way out of the beer. And for me, this one starts off really quite sharp. It really has a good bit of a raisiny quality to it in the beginning. Maybe even like a little bit of a kind of sour cherry type thing. This one really is quite sharp in the beginning of the flavour, but then that fades away a little bit. The kind of plummy raisiny notes, they spread further forward on the tongue, and then as you reach the very tip of the palate, you can feel the further you go into the aftertaste, it sort of transforms a little bit to be more blackberry-ish or blackcurranty, to be honest with you. So I mean, overall, this is a really, really interesting beer in my mind. It's a very solid take on a bourbon barrel aged beer. I really do just wonder with it though. I mean, a lot of the additions they've made to this come out quite subtly, and I wonder if it might have been interesting to try the original one without the barrel aging as well. But as it stands, it really is very, very nice. This is definitely a sipper that you should share with somebody. So I'm going to go away and share this just after the video. I mean, this one, to finish a full bottle of this yourself, I think is a bit of a struggle, but that's not to take anything away from the beer itself. It is just a bit of a beast, to be honest with you. But I really like this one, and this kind of shows you that a small brewery on a little island in Stockholm Bay, they can produce something like this. I think that's pretty noteworthy, to be honest with you. So thumbs up once again to the Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri for this. You know, is it better? Is this my favourite high alcohol beer I've had from them? I'm really not sure. I mean, both Mr. Cocoa and the Heavy Fuel were both really, really nice beers, and they're all different in their own right, so it's quite, I think it's maybe unfair to make that judgment. But the two IPAs, as I say, the Dubbel Larsen and the Yarrow IPA, those were both very, very nice as well. I think it's just more fair to say that this is a solid all-round brewery in my opinion. I'd love to see them do a Scotch ale though, because they obviously are pretty good when it comes to the higher alcohol beers. So to see a Scotch ale from these guys, I think would be quite interesting. So hopefully, as I say, somebody from the brewery is watching or listening to this video. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I think this is, yeah, full-bodied beer. At the bottom end of full-bodied though, I think, or middle end of full-bodied. Carbonation. It does have a little bit of carbonation to it still. The mouthfeel overall is a little bit oily, but at the same time it does have that little bit of lightness to it. I mean, it's not as heavy and thicken its mouthfeel as it would have been without the barrel aging. I always find that barrel aging takes the mouthfeel down a little bit of the beer and almost just thins it out, just because of those infused flavours that you get. In terms of bitterness and things, I think this one must be around, it has to be around 50 or 60 IBUs, something like that. It's not overly bitter. I mean, most of it comes from the malt base rather than the hops and things like that. There is a little bit of a hoppy remnant to this one, but mainly it's quite it's the hoppy, the bitterness in this will come from the malt base. So I think about 60 IBUs probably with this beer. Malt base has that really infused flavour you expect of a bourbon barrel aged beer. Leans towards the sweet end of things. It's got elements of roastiness to it, but this is more a kind of sweet and smooth stout actually, rather than anything else. And the fruity notes are quite sharp in the beginning, but they really sort of ripen up and become that little bit more juicy. But it's quite a sharp, fruity Imperial stout, this one, I have to say. So yeah, it's an awesome beer, this, and it was really cool to review this one for you here on the channel. I'm glad that I picked this one out of the local and Smosik beers, because you know, I just recognised the brewery's name and I thought, right, let's have a go at this one and see what it's like, and it turned out to be really pretty good actually. So this is definitely a brewery you want to keep an eye out for when you're doing your Systembolaget orders. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. A very nice example of a barrel-aged Imperial Stout. It's not the most complex and fancy one in that category that you're going to come across, but it's really solidly done, and to be honest, you can't ask for much more than that. So yeah, thumbs up once again to Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri for this. They've pulled off a really solid beer actually, but they're good with the high alcohol beers in my experience. So yeah, let's leave it at that then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri as well, and I'm sure I'll catch you guys at some point fairly soon. This one was the Big Mama, a bourbon barrel aged Imperial Stout at 12% ABV with cocoa nibs, vanilla and hazelnuts added to the brew from the Fjäderholmarnas Bryggeri just out to the east of Stockholm. A really interesting little brewery that I hope to visit at some point in the future. Thank you again for watching. Make sure you check out my social media and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers.